So welcome. Good to see everybody. I always like to start the practical Pesach review with a bit of a Dvar Torah, or more than a bit, just something to frame things for us. Chodesh Tov. Today is the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, one of the most important months in our calendar for so many different reasons. The Torah refers to this month repeatedly. It's a special month, so we're in the thick of it. Once we get to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it means we're 2 weeks away from Pesach, and this year Pesach 3338. By our best estimate, that's how long ago Yetziat Mitzrayim was. So, in the middle of the Haggadah, there's a possibility of having started today instead of at the Seder. The Haggadah entertains this possibility. No, the Torah says tell your child on that day. So you can start during the daytime. The answer is no. This is you should tell your child bavur zeh on account of this. So did God take me out of Egypt, right? Or God did for me by taking me out of Egypt? Bavur zeh lo amarti el b'shah sheish matzah umar menachem lefanecha. The idea that the matzah and the mar should be deposited before you. Demonstrative. They're in front of you. Rabbi Soloveitchik wondered. I gave you the text here from the Haggadah that was made up by the OU, the Berman edition of the Haggadah, the Seder night and exalted evening. Why should we even consider the possibility to apply an obligation of Sipur from Rosh Chodesh? It's well before the holiday started. No one thinks that on Rosh Hashanah you could take your lulav. Doesn't obtain. But the answer comes from the fact that the Rambam used the expression when he wanted to codify the mitzvah of Sipur. Yitzhak telling the story, he used the expression Zachor et hayom hazeh asher yitzatem mitzrayim. It's the day that you left Egypt, and it's parallel to remember the Shabbos day to keep it holy. The Zachor obligation, says the Rav, of the Shabbat begins in effect on the first day of the week. All week long, a person anticipates the Shabbat, yearns for it, and thinks only of it. This is reflected, as Ramban points out, by the halacha that assigns the weekdays no names of their own and instead names them in reference to Shabbos, specifically. And Yom Sheni Shabbat, the second day of the week, and so forth. And perhaps then, here too, we should begin on Rosh Chodesh, counting toward the 15th. The Braita therefore found it necessary to establish that this mitzvah begins only when one has matzah and maror placed before him, because it's already in the air. At the supermarket, in the street, in the plans people are making, and of course in the cleaning of the house. So to that end, each year I share with you, just to remind you, a few things to think about. No need to go out through this pre-Rosh Chodesh checklist because it is Rosh Chodesh. There are great guides out there. As we move into a more digital world, you can still take the paper guide. The CRC shifted to this guide because it's more portable than holding a big magazine. And a lot of the things in the magazine were clipped out either because they repeat every single year, I don't know, the times for candle lighting in Chicago versus Cincinnati versus whatever. So you could find that out. The different ads that were in that guide, different divrei Torah and long essays about topics that could just as easily be archived somewhere online. People could access them and read them at their leisure. Also, so that people could take it to the store, much less unwieldy. You could put it in a shopping basket and you have everything right there. And then there's also the fact that there's a little thank you to Mishpacha magazine, because the CRC is able to now distribute this guide, since it's slimmer and more compact, to a much wider audience throughout the United States. So it helps more people. So that's what they decided to do. However, the back of this little guide tells you, there's an app, CRC Kosher. If you have either any kind of a smartphone, you download the app. It's incredible, including a scanner where you just aim the scanner on a product, and you press a button, and it'll tell you whether it's on the recommended list. It's incredible that they actually have this, but it is there. So and then all the Pesach lists and all of that, it's even online. It's something that's easier than finding it in this guide. So OU still on the old model. They'll come around. But also a great great guide, also with all the lists, etc. And also online, highly recommended. I send it out in each of the Pesach emails to look things up. to get information about the various products, and you can look things up again also by category, by product, production, location, etc. And as kashrut became more complicated, food production became more complicated, kashrut became more complicated. Right, so we have to send people in the kashrut agencies, the main five kashrut agencies, of which the CRC is one of the big five. They have people all over the world. So things you might not have thought of that require kashrut certification or Pesach certification actually do. People don't think about it that way, but because you think, well, what could be in it? So seltzer, it's just water. But it turns out that the carbon dioxide itself that they're pumping into it is sometimes made out of chamstika products. And there's a question about it, being within the seltzer. So if you buy the seltzer before Pesach, it's different than buying it on Pesach. Why? Because unlike the regular world of kashrut, where we have in most cases an idea of bittul b'shishim, one part of something non-kosher to 60 parts kosher is nullified, or one part milk to 60 parts meat is nullified. When it comes to chametz on Pesach, that rule does not obtain. The kashrut of Pesach warrants even 1 part to 1,000 fil be'elef lobatel, and therefore we are hypersensitive about anything, even a tiny little trace amount of something that normally we would say, well, ignore. Now we do care very much about. So therefore, these product lists are important and they're vital. I reference each year. I open with this. Check the letter. It's good to reread the letter about medicines and the toiletries and cosmetics that was originally written by Maran Harav Gedai of Schwartz Zatzal, and now since he's halach le'olamo, he passed from the world already. It's already a few years. So now it's signed by Rabbi Rees, Rabbi First, and Rabbi Zucker, all on the same page, literally and figuratively, about the medicines and the cosmetics. And it's important to realize the different categories, and when it involves threat to life and limb, you just have to do what you have to do. But there's still a mid-range of different kinds of pain relievers and different kinds of things that one does need to think about in terms of these products, because we don't only avoid eating the chametz, but we're not going to own chametz. So even though some of these products you would normally not really think about because they're not food items, we do care about on Pesach. Okay, enough about that, and let's go right to the cleaning. Okay, good. I'm sure you do have specific questions, I hope, or maybe. Okay, well, go through general review, and I'll keep pausing and ask questions. We'll see what comes up. So there's cleaning, and there's koshering, and then there's things that can't be koshered. 3 different categories. So first of all, we'll talk about all 3. But if koshering is possible, I put just on top a general process. The object needs to be clean. Then you need to wait a full 24 hours without using it, and then you kosher it. There are exceptions to all of these things. So what does clean mean? It means absolutely clean. But it could be that sometimes you have the floor of an oven or a pot that has a stain on it that you just can't get out. You've tried and tried and tried. So it'll depend on whether that stain is raised or if it's flat, the nature of the discoloration is. When it comes to the pots, there's going to be this annual Pesach fair on Sunday. It's a good idea to just bring your pots there, even if you have to wait 20 minutes in line. Still much less messy and much safer than trying to do it in your own kitchen. That's my feeling. But and also they have a team of Rabbanim there who are just looking at things one after the other. Obviously, you're not bringing your oven, but pots you can bring. But that's the general process. The wait 24 hours is necessary for almost all forms of koshering, except if you're using a blowtorch. You should not use a blowtorch. But if you need to use a blowtorch for some reason, blowtorch that would heat something up to be red hot would not require it. A self-cleaning oven would not require it if it's actually a self-cleaning oven. And then the koshering process differs depending on what the item is. The general rule about koshering is as it absorbed, so it will be emitted. Kibolo, kach polto. As it absorbed, so it will be emitted afterward. So let's talk. Now let's get into the appliances, and that we're anchored in actual objects and items. This year, once again, let's say the OU gives you with a picture, a pictorial guide. You're going to find nuanced differences between the Cosford agencies. Not going to be major differences, but you'll sometimes find a minor difference between them. And sometimes year to year, there are minor differences. What's going on? They discovered there's some new technology that changed how something heats up. It could be that they discovered something new about a type of product, back to the food. But even in terms of appliances, there are things that sometimes they realize originally we were more permissive about this. It's not working out. Or we were very strict about this, but we realize maybe it was a little too strict. I'll give you an example in either direction. Refrigerators, you have to clean the shelves, the compartments, and underneath the refrigerator. But it's not clear that if you have chametz that is inaccessible, that you have to try to get to it. So the Shulchan Aruch, for instance, says if someone had a hole in their home, they would only have to clean in that hole as far as their arm could reach. You don't have to dismantle your house in order to get there. So it's somewhat questionable if you have a refrigerator and it's like a built-in unit, it's either attached or it's like right up against the wall. So you have to move the whole thing out because back there might be a Cheerio. That's unclear to me that that's warranted. Why? Because it's really inaccessible. Because you're going to recite the bittul. Again, if it's not so hard to do, then you should do it. But it's not clear to me that that's warranted. If you know that there's a sandwich back there, yeah, you have to get that out. But most people aren't putting sandwiches back there, and if it's inside a unit, I'm not telling you to give up. I'm just saying I think you have to weigh and measure what is this appliance and how likely are things in it. That's not to say you don't have to clean underneath the refrigerator with a vacuum cleaner, or to have someone bend down, make sure there's no crumbs, because crumbs do get in there. So that Yitaka you do have to get out. I'm talking about moving the entire unit and it's in a frame as it is, and people are God forbid going into traction because they can't move the refrigerator. They're hiring a crew to move it. I don't know if that's necessarily required per se. But cleaning it very, very well is required. Now, many people in the refrigerator are immaculate. They don't put anything in a soup or something hot, or if they do, it's on a trivet. But cleaning the shelves includes the rim of every shelf, and where the rim meets the shelf, things do get underneath there. You could make a case that maybe you don't have to cover the shelves. I think it's better to cover the shelves. Why wouldn't you cover the shelves? Because unless hot chametz got in there and you cleaned everything well, what's going to be how did chametz get in? But if you ever put a hot something, or if something spilled out of a jar, or I don't know what, anytime, ever, lifetime, and maybe it sat there for a day or something, so, and you didn't know about it, who knows? And especially the lower compartments, I think that everything really does ideally need to be covered like that inside. It doesn't have to be covered with steel or even tinfoil. You can put paper towel down. You can put whatever, something very light. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be all covered with contact paper. It's taking me so long to do. Slip something in that's covering. It's that the products that you're putting down that are pasted are not going to be touching the various compartments and the shelves and the like. So if a sink is made out of enamel or porcelain, we don't kosher enamel and porcelain generally, although it depends on what kind of enamel. And there's a list. The CRC also maintains a list of what kind of substances. I think they thank Ricky Glickman from Dream Kitchens for giving them the list of all the counters. But you do it, yeah, page 10. There's a whole list, but it's really the same substances for the inside of a sink would be also the same kind of issue. So generally, we say to cover it. It's not so easy to cover the inside of a sink. You'd need contact paper. Many people get an insert in the sink, with a hole in the bottom of it. Again, you try not to let it fill up. The best you can do, because you can't really kosher those substances.
You have to do that with a stainless steel sink.
No, I'm glad you mentioned, but stainless steel or metal, for that, we can kosher those. And to kosher it, since the only way it gets possible chametz that got into it was by the pouring of some boiling hot liquid, we pour boiling hot water. So if you're blessed to have more than one sink in your home, it's not so hard. If you only have one sink, it's a little more challenging because you're not going to have use of a sink for 24 hours. You need to clean a sink, let it sit 24 hours, and then you're taking each time, could be a kettle that you use for Pesach, could even be, as long as it's a clean kettle, even a non-kosher for Pesach kettle, as long as it hasn't itself been used in 24 hours, you're heating water up in it, and your pouring has to be what's called iri mikli rishon, pouring directly from a primary vessel, meaning directly from the kettle, directly from a pot that was boiling on the stove. You can't pour it into a secondary vessel. And boiling means the bubbles are coming up. If it already, that's the problem with the kettle. They're not that big. But if you take too long, you have to pour on every inch of the sink, including the spigot, including, right? So if you have one of those hoses that comes out, you want to extend it, turn it upside down, and pour the water on. You have to do this several times. You don't have to cast it all at one time, but you have to go systematically up and down every part, the faucets, the spigots, the drain. We usually replace the drain catcher, but you also need to pour water right there down the drain. You got to do it. And replace the drain catcher because it has a rubber piece on it. That's a little more challenging because things accumulate there. And I'm coming up for air in a minute for questions. Sponges obviously should be replaced. When you clean the sink, immaculate, wait 24 hours, and then you're pouring boiling water. You need to put towels down. We've all done this before. It's very messy. It's very messy. And obviously a kettle is safer than using pots because the pot can be unwieldy. It can, right? It can be splashing in different directions. So you need, it's sometimes a two-person job, someone to hold the towels and whatnot and counters, but you're going every inch of it. Once you've done it, again, clean the sink, wait 24 hours. You're boiling up the water in a pot or kettle that has not been used in 24 hours. And you have to keep doing it, keep refilling the water, boil again. And like that systematically, you can kosher the sinks. Okay, let me pause here, please.
I have porcelain sink, which I always cover with contact.
Yep.
Do I have to do the water thing before?
No, you're just cleaning the sink very well because koshering is not going to work in a porcelain sink.
One point, someone told me I still have to do the water and then with the contact.
No.
Okay,
You do have to clean it well,
right.
but then you're covering with the contact paper, and yeah, that's what you do.
Okay. If to do that with the sink, with the hot water, does the sink have to be dry before I do the next batch of hot water? Am I supposed to dry that?
No, not necessarily. No. The point is that the stream of water, it's the stream of water that's causing the koshering. So one year, someone, shall remain nameless, obviously, came to me right before Pesach, and they said, it was a cinch to kosher my sink. I said, why? I said, I took a massive pot, and I just boiled it up, and I poured the whole thing into the sink. And the sink was almost totally full. It's koshered. And then I put contact paper that told me on the rim that the water didn't get to him. I said, yeah, but there's a problem. So what's the problem? The point is, it's the act of the pouring, the steady stream from the primary vessel onto the surface, the part that it hits. That's what's getting koshered. It's not that you suddenly filled up the sink with hot water. Follow? Because the sink definitionally is a secondary vessel. It's not the vessel where the water was heated. It's the vessel it's getting poured into. Therefore, and that's why it's a painstaking process. You're pouring it line by line, and that's why it's painstaking. You don't have to dry in between, but you do have to line by line over and you have to remember where you stopped. So how do you remember? You could put something down in the sink, obviously not a food item and not a vessel. It's a chametz stick, but put something there. So you remember, I did it like that, right? So it's the act of pouring over each thing. And the same thing for the spigot, same thing for the faucets. Like that. Does that answer your question? Is that clear? Yeah. So again, and it's not that's if someone had a sink potentially that was also you could boil water inside the sink, then it would be much easier. You just boil up water, but that's not what happens. You're pouring into the sink. So okay. The incinerator also needs to be cleaned out. It's dangerous. You have to be very careful, make sure the power's off, obviously, and if better not to stick your hand in if you can, but you also hear it has to be, you got to run the incinerator, clean it, run it. And here also you're pouring the boiling water. If you have an incinerator, you're taking out, there's a rubber gasket on the incinerator. Better to replace those also. You can buy them. It's not too late to order it. online today, the availability of products, you can get things in, 2, 3 days, but sometimes within the same day, you're getting the replacement ones, but you need to pull out the one you have first and pour the boiling water in there. Again, it's not a question exactly as it would have absorbed the chametz, so it will need to emit the chametz. Okay, so that's as far as that, and then the incinerator also could be used on Pesach. It's inside, it's internal, but again, you've obviously run it and you ran soap down there, etc. Okay, and if you see chametz, then you have to pull it out, but if you have tongs, it's better than sticking your hands in for obvious reasons. And then you have the other gasket that goes in, the rubber gasket that goes in, just like you're replacing the drain catchers. Counters, again, you have granite and metal and formica. Formica is a form of plastic. When plastics were first being invented and created, there was a debate whether you could kosher them. Today, it's a lot more, I don't know what the word is, accepted that you can kosher plastic. The CRC always maintained that. Schwartz, it's all held that way. Baris Shalita holds that way, but there were other kosher more machmir, and it seems that most say you can kosher plastic. We typically don't kosher like a plastic ladle or something because it's considered inexpensive, and we won't usually do that. But technically, it would work, and certainly counters can be koshered. Also, the same process with pouring from a boiling kettle or something, but counters usually much larger than a sink, and it's not catching it. There isn't even a receptacle, so it's even a bigger mess.
I have from my so
you scrub
you
them.
scrub it and then you pour boiling water. Well, 1 year it buckled my
Oh yeah,
the boiling water buckled my.
right. So then he's like, was that really worth it?
It's still covered.
So if you do that, then I would say you still should put a piece of tape wherever there's a seam on the formica counter. But then the point is, you don't have to actually cover the counters because you koshered the counters.
But I do cover my counters anyway.
Okay, so that's the next thing I was getting to.
Oh,
Instead of koshering your counters, you could just cover them.
I do.
But if you're covering them, you don't need to kosher them. You're cleaning them and you're covering them. So in the early years in Chicago, I was koshering with the boiling water at every inch of the, again, you have an island, you have this, that. It was a humongous mess, and the water's going on the wood paneling, and it was a big mess, piles of towels. Then Lori said, we're not doing this anymore. So went to Home Depot and got, I think it's called cork board. It's a very thin, when they're in big pieces, they're kind of wavy. So it's like, a little bit, but you can get them in sections. We got them made to order. On one side, they're unfinished. I mean, it's not for splinters, but it's more like a cork board. On the other side, it's looks like formica or something, or whatever it was, some kind of a smoother covering. We keep them in the garage. They're standing up. Comes time for Pesach. It's a 5-minute job. I bring them out, cover, 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 cover. Every one is labeled underneath where it goes on which counter. Finished. It's not such a big deal. Or contact paper, something like that. It's not, in other words, sometimes we make it harder than we think. It's going to be more of a convenience for the whole week. I could use my regular counter, but what did I gain? That's just be easier, smarter to just put a cover. So we're getting smarter over time. Okay. I get asked every year about the steamers, people using steamers. Almost none of the steamers actually work. So I'll stop there. If you have the Wagner such and such particular model and you're going to hold it a third of an inch, a quarter of an inch away from the surface of the counter, and you're going to go like at a snail's pace, tortoise-like every inch, mazel tov. But otherwise, if you're hiring a service, there is some kind of service that the CRC has recommended in the past. I don't know anything about it, but if they say it's good, I'll go with that. So that's where we're holding. That's where we're holding. Okay. I forgot to mention for the sink, there's a sink faucet. So if there's a filter, so you got to detach the filters, the nozzles, you got to pour the boiling water on the whole thing. The instant hot faucet that you have, you also have to pour boiling water on it. Yeah, same thing. Okay. Okay, so those counters, plastic debate I mentioned. Cutting boards, better to replace for Pesach. If they're they're in the counter, so then they cover it. A mixer, a blender, a food processor, generally we say it's very hard to clean these things out. You gotta clean the motor and the whole thing, all the different grates, excuse me, and vents. It's much better not to do this. Technically, if you could clean the crevices, all that, you still need to change the blades and the bowls, but it's not really recommended. Dishwashers, I generally have shied away from permitting people to wash the dishwasher. There might be a case where someone washes their dishes that happened in the shul. It's probably 17 or 18 years ago. Excuse me. They wash the dishes and then they put it in for a sanitizing of the dishes. Then they put it in the dishwasher. So it means they never had object of chametz went in there. So there, I think you can kosher the dishwasher, but short of that, it'd be pretty hard. The rubber gaskets and the seals, and then everywhere that there's a perpendicular seam of some kind within the racks, it's just way too complicated. It's a week. Live like it's 1970 something, live like it's 1960 something. You have to wash the dishes. I don't know.
People say that if you get separate racks, that you could.
Right. So I'm saying even with the separate racks, it would still be crucial that you didn't put actual chametz in there, because you still have to do the filter underneath and all the rubber gaskets and the whole thing. It'll be a royal mess. So I've generally shied away from it. I know that it's not impossible. It's not it's impossible. It's just after a point, see under the countertop discussion, how detailed do you want to be after which point you're saying, I'm making this harder than it needs to be. Or you go disposable, whatever it is. I don't want to say that because it fell out of vogue in the in terms of the climate and all of that and ecology. Okay, we shouldn't waste also. So I don't know, but okay. The ovens. So the microwave oven is actually not so hard to kosher, not so hard to kosher. But I have said year over year, I think you do have to replace the plate and any covers that you use for foods you do have to replace. But when I say not so hard, it implies that you're able to actually clean it. If you put messy things in there during the year and it's splashed and you have the vent and the grate and the fan on the top, you have to clean all of that. It presupposes. Sometimes it's really not possible. But if you've been pretty careful and you look in, you see there aren't really stains, it's clean. Again, you'll wait the 24 hours and then you put in a styrofoam cup, put water in a cup, you put it up, you put it in there for a good few minutes so that when you take it out, it's steamed up the inside. You can see because the water's boiled off, even though you don't see the steam, but it got so that the walls are already warm. Hot, that's good enough. But then you have to do it a second time. Wait for the water to cool, move the cup over, do it again. How come? Because the spot under the cup didn't get koshered. You got to do that separately. Here again, I'll say personally, we just don't use the microwave for Pesach because it just got too crazy. Like the kids and this one and that one and something splashed and the sauce and we were pretty clean, but we still said it's not going to happen. So forget it. So please.
So I have a separate place.
Oh, great.
That I keep current.
Perfect.
But if I were to try to do that with
The regular.
I get rid of the water that it used to kosher the microwave, can you just pour that down?
Good question. That can just be poured down. Once it cools, wait for it to cool. So it's lower than 113 degrees Fahrenheit. How are you going to measure that? Here it's called Yad Soledet, but Moshe Feinstein thought it was about 113 degrees plus minus. It means your hand wouldn't recoil if you put your finger. Even if it's warm, but you put your finger in and it's tepid, doesn't matter. Go down the drain. If you're worried, you put it in the bathroom sink, but it's not really an issue. Once you use the same water, when you move the cup over, it's the same water. Obviously, if it all boiled out, you put more, but otherwise, same water. Okay. But there's internal vents, there's grates, it's not so simple. A conventional oven, if it's a self-cleaning oven, then just putting it on the highest heat. I get this question every year. Can I put the racks, not the oven racks, but which stay in, but the grates from the stovetop grates inside? No, you should not do that. Why? Because to kosher those grates, they're really supposed to be koshered the same way that they absorbed. How did they absorb? Direct fire went on them. How did it happen? From the element, from the gas, right? From the gas, the fire that was coming up. So that's how you're going to kosher it, which we'll get to in a minute. But self-cleaning oven, check to make sure that it actually works, and go online and make sure there aren't horror stories, there's always horror stories, but horror stories from the company saying you shouldn't really self-clean it. Because I once had a bad situation with that many years ago in New Jersey. No time to tell the whole story again, but if it's self-cleaning oven, it's relatively simple. There are different kinds of self-cleaning ovens now. Some of the self-cleaning ovens are not getting up to 600, 700 degrees. They're lower. They're 200, they're 450, 500. That's not self-cleaning. Now, what's the difference? What's the difference? Self-cleaning oven means it's getting so hot that it is incinerating all of the all of the chametz, rather, elements that are absorbed into the walls and the racks. But if it's only getting up to 500 or something, it calls it self-cleaning. It's not really a self-cleaning cycle. It's the broil cycle. Then you do need to wait to 24 hours. You don't need the 24 hours if it's actually a self-cleaning oven. But if it's not self-cleaning, then you use a caustic cleaner, including the shelves, easy off or something like that. Make sure there's good ventilation in the house, etc. Everyone here has done it, you know. You do have to clean off raised stains. And then you're putting it on its highest heat to kosher it. Generally, we say for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour on its highest heat after the 24 hours. But of course, you do need to keep it at that heat. So make sure your oven actually gets that hot. I've dealt with a few families lately where the oven is broken. It doesn't actually get to the highest heat. The highest heat is much lower. That becomes a problem to use it on Pesach. So you have to know something about it. A broiler pan has to come out. You cannot save the broiler pan. And again, as I said, you turn it to the highest heat for an hour, solid hour, you're good to go. After you take out the easy off, you wipe it off.
If it's self-cleaning, do you run it for an hour as well?
No, self-cleaning is however long self-cleaning takes, which is probably more than an hour until it gets to the height of the heat and it comes back down. Usually an issue. So you do need to consider that.
Once you put the racks in, what about?
The oven racks can stay in because that's where they go.
I do that with PCR.
Right. But when it's time to kosher the racks,
Right.
if it's self-cleaning, you put them in. If it's
self-cleaned, I put them in and run it for
an
hour and 45
on the highest heat.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that, why are you doing the racks separate? You don't keep the racks in when you self-clean. Okay, so in that case, that's fine. Then for the racks, you have to wait 24 hours after you use the easy off before you put them in with the highest heat. Yeah. There are many people who are machmir that they also cover the racks after that with tinfoil and they vent it. So do what you've done in the past. But that's that's that. Anything that's not a raised stain is okay. Okay. So good. That's as far as that. Broiler pans I mentioned to remove. Barbecues, very hard to kosher. Not impossible, but hard, especially if it's a gas grill. I'm skipping it. If you have that issue, call me. Stovetop grates, gas, you're putting a blech or a kettle or something on top. As long as it's clean, it doesn't matter if it's kosher Pesach or not. It doesn't matter if it's fleishik milk. It doesn't matter. You're putting it on top of that stovetop grate for gas because it spreads the fire around. You may go to the highest heat. When it gets the highest heat, 10 minutes. You can put water in that pot or kettle so that there's water boiling. It's not misshaping the kettle or the pot, but it's like 10 minutes. And it has to be something obviously that covers the grate so that it's spreading the heat around. The truth is, if you're using a big pot to kosher the sink, you end up koshering the grates while you're doing it. Because the pot, you just move it to different elements. You don't have to do it all at the same time. You don't have to put, you have 4 elements, 4 pots, and turn everything on the highest heat. 1, cool down. 2, cool down. It'll take time, but it's much easier to do that. If it's electrical, then you're turning it on until it's red hot. The red hot, as you know, goes in and out, in and out. So that's usually about, I'd say like about a half hour, 40 minutes or so, on, off, etc. And like that, you can kosher, the electrical. The glass and corningware tops are more complicated because we don't really kosher. No, not really. We are not allowed to kosher glass, and that would be problematic and challenging. There is a machloket about things like Pyrex, if they can be koshered or not. Some say yes, some say no. If some major poskim will say yes, because heat resistant. We're not worried it's going to break. The glass top stoves, generally, the kashrut agencies say it's best if you can get a disc that you buy at Home Depot. It's a metal disc, 1/8 of an inch thick, stands that goes on top of each of the glass elements, so that your pots are raised, and the heat will still be transferred and conducted through that glass, that piece of metal. But if you can't do that, then at the very least, you're turning each element on stepwise fashion to the highest heat. Highest heat, again, gonna have to be 10 minutes at its highest heat, but because it oscillates, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. So you have to think about that and make sure that if it's a longer period of time, and then you only use pots that are smaller in diameter than the diameter of that element. Where you get into trouble is you're using a large soup pot on a smaller element, it goes over to the side. When it's an electrical oven or a gas oven, it's raised, so it's not touching the surface of the stovetop. But it is touching the surface of the surface of the stovetop. It's all one layer. It's questionable if you can cover the stovetop around it. Questionable, because some say it causes it to break. It's caveat emptor, by your own risk. You got to think about it before. Ani lo yodea. If you have a stainless steel stovetop, technically you could kosher with, again, pouring boiling water, because things probably spilled out from pots. The trouble is it's going to destroy the mechanism in many cases. That volume of water on every inch. So we tell people just cover it. You get another catcher in the you can buy disposable ones usually for gas and for electric that go underneath, and you cover the rest of the tin foil, and you're safe. Again, the glass ones are a little more complicated. Induction stovetops, also complicated because it doesn't actually get hot, right? It's the pot touching it. So there you need like separate pots basically that are just for Pesach. More questionable if you can kosher them because of different coatings and things that are on them. So if that's your circumstance, call me. We'll deal with it. We'll talk about it. Can openers technically don't need to be changed, but because they go into the food items and they're usually washed with chametz, we tell people it's better. You really should change it. People don't think about it, but you need to get rid of the vacuum cleaner bag. The garbage cans don't have to be removed, but they have to be cleaned. The outdoor one, usually like the one Skokie gives out, very hard to clean. Just pour a little bleach down there. That's it. And swish it around. It's not really, that's bottling it. It's ruining it as a food item. If there's a sandwich down there, yeah, you have to get it out. But there's some kind of gook that got in the bottom, leaked out of a bag, you're rinsing it out with some bleach and a hose. It's good enough. Garbage cans in the house though also need to be koshered. Excuse me, need to be cleaned, not koshered, right? Just cleaned. We've covered a lot of the materials on the yes list, as long as it doesn't have cracks and crevices. Wood, stone, metal, and plastic. Dire need crystal means in the olden days, people had special crystal they used all year long. They couldn't afford to have Pesach dishes. So it was the same glasses. The dishes you can't kosher because they're made out of porcelain or ceramic. That can't work. Or Corel or some such thing. But the glasses, crystal glasses, if they were only used for cold liquid, not bouillon and hot chocolate, but they're delicate, etc. So there's a way to do it. You need to fill up the bathtub with cold water. You put the glasses that are clean in. You wait 24 hours. You empty all the water. You fill it again 3 times over. That's it's not all that easy to do because it's a 72-hour process. Bisman is I'm not aware of anyone really who does it so much, but maybe you're one of those people. I don't know. But glass, otherwise, we don't kosher. We Ashkenazim don't kosher. Wood, stone, metal, plastic, kosherable. China, earthenware, Pyrex, I put on the no list. I told you already, though, there are poskim who hold it, so yes. But I've generally considered it like glass for our purposes. Corel, Corningware, and glass used for hot chametz, or even if it's washed with chametz in hot water, also not going to work. If you have your crystal, you never use it for anything hot, but you then put it in the fleshig dishwasher with chametz in there. Shouldn't be used on Pesach. So we talked about the preparation. Same thing. You have to not use it for 24 hours after you've cleaned it, obviously. And then you're going to kosher, disassemble the joints and connecting parts. If there's dirt, tarnish, or rust, it has to be removed. The tarnish, if it's just a stain that's not raised, you run your finger on it, it's just a color difference. Usually that's okay. It's much easier to go on Sunday, though. This Sunday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., the CRC Pesach Fair, and just bring your stuff. Take you much less time. The silverware, the whole thing. You could start with a pot. Again, milchiks, fleishiks, kosher, non-kosher for Pesach, doesn't matter. As long as it hasn't been used in 24 hours. Many people have a koshering pot that's designated, but if you don't, technically you could use any of those. And you have to put the silverware in, but the water has to be boiling. And you don't dump 20 pieces of silverware into the pot. Why? Because it's going to diminish the temperature and then it's not boiling and you have problems. So the clean cutlery has to wait. Each piece is to go in. You have to kosher a pair of tongs that hasn't been used in 24 hours. It's clean. Kosher the tongs. Pick up piece number 1, put it in, pull it out. Then number 2. After each piece comes out, it's rinsed in cold water. Again, cold water. So it could be in your kosher Pesach sink or not. It doesn't matter. Cold water for this purpose is fine. And then you're going to use that for your koshering purposes, and then those items could be used on Pesach. If you have wooden handles or 2 pieces that are made into different utensils, that's much harder to kosher because there's a seam between them. Again, it's good to show it to one of the people at the CRC fair. They can give you a psak about whether or not it's viable. Pots, if there's removable lid covers, lid handles, I mean to say, and all of those. So that's also discussions. If a pot has handles that are riveted to it, so it's usually okay, but you have to see, is it fused to it or it's really like a separate piece that actually unscrews, and all these different questions that come up. Any item which can be koshered and involves direct heat. So I just gave you the sort of the idea behind it. Hagal or libun kal. Heat and direct fire is libun gamur. If it's only cold in storage, it's milu v'ira. That's the 72 hours piece. But okay, so that's the basics. I think we just went through a bunch of different kinds of things. One thing that to look at, very, very well done, and I'm biased because I live here, but can it be koshered? It's on page 9. Common things in your kitchen, and a check, an X, or a tzarech iyun, which means have to check, what's it made of, and can it be done, can it not be done? And there's a little QR code, which if you don't know how to use a QR code, it's very simple. If you have a smartphone that has a camera, you turn on the camera like you're going to take a picture, and you put the camera aimed on this little code, and you have a pop-up to a link. You click it, it'll take you to the website. The CRC this year has, and pastors have also had little videos that just show you practically in a kitchen how to do it. Well, it's great. And this year, they pioneered new short little videos in the supermarket, with Rabbi Fishbane and his granddaughter. It's very cute, but it's practical questions. It's another way of reaching people, and the incredible disappearing, shrinking attention span of humanity continues to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So now we're like in 90-second clips. So, okay, you're here in person, but if you're not here in person, you're going to watch a 45-minute class that Rabbi Engel's giving about kashrus? No, you're going to say you're going to, but then you're not going to. You're going to want the 30-second edition. You just email me, or you text me, and I'll give you an answer. But it tells you here, I'll give you an example where there's a discrepancy. The OU holds that a warming drawer typically will not be able to get hot enough. And therefore, unless you know exactly how to kosher with a torch, you cannot kosher a warming drawer. CRC warming drawers, you can kosher. How do you kosher a warming drawer? You clean it out very well. You wait 24 hours, and you take a sterno and you put it inside, and you light it inside. Obviously, you need some way to keep it open. If you close it, it's going to smother it. Keep it open, and you let it burn out. When that happens, you kosher the warming drawer, because it's a warming drawer. It's not for cooking, it's just for warming. So hopefully this overview helps us get ready for Pesach. I just put here about the days of Erev Pesach. If you're selling your house, say you're selling your house. You're not selling the utensils in the house, but if you're saying, I'm not going to be home, so I'm going to be away. So when you fill out this form, put here where you're going to be. If it's an Eastern time zone, it's the sales the day before. So that because we're not 100% sure, what's the Isser Chametz? Where I am, that's when it starts, or where my Chametz is. So we play it both sides. So we sell if you have Chametz in Israel, and you're going to be in Israel before. If not, then we're going to do it the day of. If you're saying that you're not going to be here, so someone has access to your house somehow in town, and the list of rooms that you may need, if you come back in the middle of Pesach, you list off, exceptional, I'm leasing the property. You're not leasing you're not selling the pots and the pans, because then the non-Jewish person owns them and they have to go to the mikveh with all of them. So you don't want to do that. So we say that. So you're ridding the house of chametz gamur. If you have, cookies, cakes, breads, cereals, you should check, is it chametz gamur or not? If you have massive quantities and getting rid of that is going to be a hefsed meruba, it's $100 or more, sell it. You're putting it away to sell it. But if you have smaller quantities, now's not a good time to buy a lot of it. It's a good time to divest of the chametz. And some things are suffix chametz, not really chametz gamur, etc. So you can keep them and sell them. A lot of people have a minhag not to keep chametz gamur. Okay. B'tikat chametz, wherever you're going to be over Pesach, that last night, wherever property you're in, if that's your property, you're either going to be there for Pesach or it's your home. That's you're going to do with a bracha. It's all in the Gada. I don't want to repeat it because you already know it. It's there, and I've talked about it between Kamar. If you're not going to be home, you can appoint someone else to come to your house. If you're not going to be home the night before Pesach, and you can't appoint someone to come to your house, so you could do the night before you leave your house and without a bracha. Yeah. And after you do the search, you make the bittul, you recite the bittul, the nullification for unknown chametz. Say it in English and in Aramaic. The one, so you understand what you're saying. The other, because it's traditional. And during the daytime, between the time you're not allowed to eat and not allowed to own the chametz, that's shara biur. That's the best time to say the declaration on known chametz. So that's what you should do for that. Hope this was helpful. It's an overview. I'm here for questions and comments. So feel free to be in touch. And hope it was comprehensive and comprehensible, both. And I wish you Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Till we meet again, in health and happiness. I don't have the new one. Is that the new one for this year? I don't have it yet. No.
So I never, this says